Hello friends, and welcome back to Nearly Sane Games. I'm Neil, and today we're going to talk about my Ser Boltyn Breaker of Dawn Classic Constructed deck. First off, we should look at Boltyn's abilities. First one, if you've charged this turn, attacks you control have +1 while defended by an attack action card. This is an important one, and one that is easy to forget. So when your opponent starts blocking, make sure to ask them if those were attack action cards, because if they are, that gives your attacks +1, which is very important. And the second one is an attack reaction. Banish a card from Ser Boltyn's Soul. Target attack with power greater than its base power gains a go again. This is also a very important one, and one that you have to make sure that you're reading very closely. This can only give the card go again if its power is greater than its base power. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we look at some of the other cards in the deck tech. Now, first off, we're going to talk about Boltyn's weapon. And for my build, I'm using Raiden. And the reason I like Raiden is because I'm charge heavy deck. I'm going to charge often, so it's usually going to get the +3. And the attack is free. It costs 0 to do the attack. And that works out real well because we're going to be spending a lot of cards just to get the charge going. So after we're looking at Ser Boltyn's weapons, we should look at his equipment. For his head slot, I'm using the Arcanite Skullcap. This is pretty much only for the battle-worn blocking abilities. So if you have less health, then this gets +1 and you can block for 2, and then it'll get a counter, and then you can block for 1 again. Blocking is very important. If you were going to replace this with something, I would suggest for this build to take something that has at least a block 1 for you. Now for the arms, I'm using Brageforge Bracers. Again, this is strictly for the blocking abilities. This can block for 2, and then it can block for 1. Very useful with your blocks. If you're not going to use the bracers, I would probably recommend something like Gallantry Gold. It has a 1 block and battle worn, so that you can use the ability later if for any reason that comes into use. But Brageforge Bracers is definitely the best. For the chest piece, I'm running the Spring Tunic. This comes in, is very useful for trying to do a V for the Vanguard turn, gives you a resource, and allows you to go very, very wide with that. Very important. This is hard to replace, and it's going to, that extra resource every 3rd turn is very important for those turns. But if you were going to replace it, you could do something like Courage of Bladehold, which will give you 3 blocks. The cost reduction doesn't really help you at all, but I'm mainly looking for the blocks there. You could use Vestige of Soul. It's not going to work real well for you. The fact is that we're charging our soul, so we're not just necessarily putting a card, a light card, into your hero's soul, and we're also running very cheap things, so that's not going to, you're not going to really gain the benefit from the ability on this card. If you've already pitched something to charge, it's not likely you're going to pitch something again, and everything costs really a low amount, so the extra resources here probably isn't going to get you anywhere. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. If you don't have the Tunic or the Courage of Bladehold, you could potentially just go with something like Iron Rot just to get the extra block in there. For the feet, Snapdragon Scalers is a must. There's going to be times where you can't give your first attack go again, and you'll need to use the Scalers to break that and continue the chain to get that extra damage in there. For sideboard equipment, we're running a Null Rune Hood and Null Rune Boots. If we want to, if we're fighting against Chain, I run both of these. You want to be able to handle the turns where they run Vexing Malice and have 2 arcane damage coming at you, and we can talk about the strategy for Chain in another video. Next up, we have our charge cards, and Boltyn likes to charge, and so that's what we're going to do a lot. First off, we have Take Flight. Now this costs 1, but it's really an okay cost to pay because you get Go Again given automatically here, and you'll be able to charge. So even an early turn attack would be pay 1, play Take Flight, charge, and get Go Again, and then just swing with Raiden. So with the red, that's 4 and 3 for a 7-point attack. That's not bad. But we run all 3 reds, all 3 yellows, and all 3 blues. This is our primary card that we want to start out our turn, and that works real well for us. Next up, we have Engulfing Light, and we run the 3 reds. The nice thing about this card is it lets us charge for 0, and the 3 attack is not very good. But if you charge this turn, which you should almost always have, if it hits, it goes into your soul. This card's not likely going to hit because it's an easy block, but we could talk about pumping our first attacks a little bit later. But we're running all 3 of those. And similar, we have Express Lightning. This hits for a little bit harder. So the red hits for 4, but we don't have the added clause for if it hits, it goes into your soul. I don't mind that because really what we want to do is kind of push through damage here. And there's some times where you don't have your Snapdragons, and you don't have any way to give this plus attack, and so this may be sometimes your only attack. And I'd rather have more attack than have an attack that has some promises on hits that we aren't likely going to get. And we run the full set of reds and the full set of yellows for Express Lightning. Next up, we have Bolt of Courage. Bolt of Courage has a nice on-hit effect. If you've charged this turn and this hits, if this hits, draw a card. You want to pay attention to this, and that makes this a nice card to target to any pump effects. But you got to remember that you need to give this card Go Again before this hits and you draw the card. So sometimes you're going to be drawing into, you're going to give this Go Again hoping that you can get another card you can play, and sometimes that doesn't happen, but that's okay. Now I've switched to Cross the Line here, and I'll run the 3 reds and the 3 yellows across the line. And this is another pay 1 to charge cards. And the reason I've switched to this is because I like the additional attack. There's some times where we just can't get what we need out of this, and your first attack is going to be your only attack for the turn for whatever reason, and I would rather have that be a 4 or 5 attack than a 3 attack that can easily be blocked by 1 card. If this goes, then at least I've got a chance of pulling 2 cards out of your hand if you decide to block it, and if not, 5 damage is a decent amount of damage to get across for a turn. And now we'll get into the charge payoff cards. We'll start with Valiant Thrust, running 3 red Valiant Thrust. Again, this is a pay 1 to play, but if you charge this turn, Valiant Thrust gets +3. So you're talking about a 7 attack out of a 1-cost card. It's very good. There are times that if I know I have the resources, Beacon of Victory might be used to go grab this card to follow up for a good amount of damage for the turn. I like Valiant Thrust a lot. Next we have Battlefield Blitz. Again, another payoff card. Another one that costs 1. But if you charge this turn, Battlefield Blitz gains Go Again. Again, it's nice to have the Go Again built in here. We've most likely charged this turn. So if we have the extra resource to pay, getting another 5 attack with Go Again And again, a free follow-up with Raiden for 3 makes for a good, strong hit. Next, we get to our pump effects. And for this build, I'm running 3 Courageous Steel Hands, red, and 3 blue. And this says if you've charged this turn, target attack gains +3, and the blue says +1. And this is nice to give your first attack that extra boost that you need so that you can give it go again. The thing that I don't like about pumping this way is that you have to spend this card to do that, and you have to have another card in soul to give the current card go again. So while it does work, and that's nice, that's an extra issue. Also, note that this says, if you've charged this turn, target attack gains +3. This doesn't work if you haven't charged this turn. And so if you're low on cards, or you're playing with something that doesn't charge, this card, pay attention, this card doesn't work the way you want it to. And so sometimes it's kind of a dead card in hand. Which brings me to Captain's Call Yellow. This is one I have been experimenting with recently. And this says, choose one. The next attack action card with cost 1 or less you play this turn gains +2 attack. Or the next attack action card with cost 1 or less you play this turn gains go again. And a lot of times I like to play this. This is a 0 cost. And I will play this to just get my card go again. And the reason I like that is because I can give something like Express Lightning go again out the gate. I don't have to pump it up higher. I don't have to spend a card for my soul to give it go again. This card already does that. And there's another cases where I do have plenty of cards in soul, and I can give Express Lightning +2 and just give it the go again from a card in soul. So I have options here, and I always like cards that give me options. Next up, we have Plunder Run, and I'm running 2 reds for that. Plunder Run is nice because it gives the next attack action card, if this was played from Arsenal, +3. And that's a pretty big pump. And this also says the next time an attack action card you control this turn hits, you draw a card, which is also a good effect. There are some runs that there's some lines that we're bringing across 15, 20 damage, and the likelihood that one of those is going to hit is pretty high. So this gives us a good payoff for that. All right, now we get into the Boltyn specialty cards, and here's the big one, V for the Vanguard, and you run all 3 of those. This is your big turn. What I like to do with this is to take the counter off the Spring Tunic and pay for this, and this lets you charge any number of times. And my typical number is 2. I like to have 2. That makes this a 5 attack. It'll make Raiden a 5 attack. If you have another random 0 cost, that can make that potentially a 6 attack, just in the middle there, which is very helpful. There are also times where I don't have a good line to play that second card, and I may charge 3 times and send via the Vanguard over there for 6, and then Raiden as a follow-up as another 6, which is also still a pretty decent attack for the turn. Next we have Beacon of Victory. And Beacon of Victory is nice because it can give that initial attack a plus attack. This will cost you a card from the soul, so you got to really think about when you're going to use this and what your follow-ups are going to be. What my first go-to of Beacon of Victory is usually the Lumia Ascension. That's generally what I want to get the first time. We'll talk about that card in a minute, but there are other times where if I have the resources available, I might go back and grab a Valiant Thrust to come back for 7 there. Or there's some other cards that might be big hits, or there might be a 0 cost card that we need because we just don't have the rest of the resources to finish out this turn, that we might want to use for that instead. And Next up, we have Lumia Ascension. This card is great because it allows us to attack with Raiden. It gives Raiden +1. If we charge this turn, it lets us attack with Raiden a second time. Now we still have to give Raiden Go Again, which we should be able to do with cards from our soul, but pay attention to that in case we don't have those cards from the soul. It might not be a good time to play this. And you notice that I'm only running one copy of this in this build. And that's primarily because we're using Raiden. And usually when this comes out, it's a 4 attack, 8 points of damage. Usually we're swinging Raiden twice for 4 each. And that's a pretty good chunk of damage. But I found that I get hands with multiples of these in hand, and it's generally not what we want. So if you're running the axes or the saber builds, you're obviously going to run 3 of these, but for my build, I find that 1 is what I want. I can get it with the first Beacon of Victory, and then after that, Beacon of Victories become something else, and that's fine. Bolting Blade. Love Bolting Blade. It costs 4, which is a lot, but it attacks for 7. And if you've charged, it costs 2 less for each charge that you've done. So if you can manage to get this via the Vanguard turn, you can swing for, if you charge twice, you swing for 7 for free, which is a pretty good deal. I'm not going to be upset by that. It's also good in the Prism match. It's a 7 attack, so it blocks really well. But I'm not afraid to block with this card. I'm not afraid to put this card in my soul. This is kind of a, if I get a good opportunity to use it, we're going to use it. Otherwise, it can be used for other things. Speaking of which, we have 3 copies of Celestial Cataclysm. This is a wonderful card when it works. Banish 3 cards from your soul, get a 0 attack or 0 cost attack for 7 with 7 damage with Go Again. Amazing. But again, it's situational. If things are going well and you're charging your soul, there's sometimes a Beacon of Victory might go and search this one out. If I've got 4 cards in soul, I can pay 1 for the Beacon of Victory and have 3 left over for the Celestial Cataclysm at the end. And then with the Go Again, we can fire Raiden after that. It's very good. But again, this is situational, so if things aren't going that direction, I can charge this card, I can use this card for resources, or I can use this card to block. Don't be afraid to use big, flashy, majestic cards to block. Sometimes that's the right call. Next up, we have 1 Soul Shield. This is a pretty excellent card for a 2-pitch. It blocks 6, and it goes into your soul afterwards. Now, I only run 1 of these in the main deck. It just depends on the situation that you're in. A lot of times I'll end up charging this, and I'm okay with that. But you want to not have too many of these. Boltyn doesn't like to pitch 2 cards. That usually makes for a poor follow-up turn. So depending on the matchup, we may want more of these or we may want less of these. And finally, we get down to some utility cards that are generic but really good. Enlightened Strike. You have to pay attention to this because you have to have a card that goes on the bottom of your deck. This isn't the best because sometimes you want to charge and you can't. This doesn't charge for you. So you'll need to watch where you want to use this. But this card can give itself +2, which is very nice because then you can use Boltyn's ability to give it Go Again. But I've been finding myself just more often than not lately is just giving it Go Again and then do another follow-up with Raiden if I've charged this turn because 3 is going to be more than that +2. And so that works out better if I can get a charge in there. And finally, we have, of course, Command and Conquer. I only have 2 copies, so I'm running 2 copies. It's great. It attacks for 6, defends for 3, costs 2, which can sometimes be a little bit awkward. Sometimes this just doesn't fit into the hand I want to use for this turn, and I may end up charging with it. The abilities on here are really phenomenal. That you can't use defense reaction cards, and if it hits, destroy all cards in their arsenal. So this is pretty much a spend 2 and get 2 cards out of the opponent's hand. Now you can use something like Brutal Assault in as a replacement. Again, the base stats are all the same. Cost 2, attacks for 6, and defense for 3. Those are usually what we're interested in, but it's not going to really pull the cards out of the player's hands like Command and Conquer will. So that's it for the main board, and that's the base 60 I'll bring out, and if nothing else, this is what I'll run. But there's other matchups where we get into our sideboard. And the first thing we're going to talk about the sideboard are defense reactions. Now I have 3 Sink Below and 3 Fate Foreseen. And these are close to being the same card. For 0 is defense reaction that blocks for 4, and that's the important part. Each of them can filter your hand a little bit. Sink Below allows you to put 1 on the bottom and draw a new one. Fate Foreseen lets you opt 1. These come in for big defensive turns, or big defensive matchups. I'll bring all of these in, for instance, for a game against Bravo. I want to be able to block the big turns and try to keep 3-card hands to punch through damage as I can. And if you're not ready for some big blocking, then you're going to have a bad time. Next up, we have 2 more Soul Shield, again, in big blocking matchups where we want to try to go for some turns where we may just totally block out. This card is still good in Boltyn, and it's not, it's kind of a stumbling block when you're trying to go fast, but if you need to do some defending, this is still a pretty good choice. So we got 2 on the side for that. Got 1 more Bolting Blade in the side. Again, I like this card, but it's hard to have multiples of them. But if you get into something like the Prism matchup, where you may need to pop more auras, pop more heralds, the 7 attack does real well for that. And in the right situations, you can also attack for 7. Steelblade Shunt. I like this card. It pay 1 and block 4. That allows you to do things that a lot of your other defenses won't do. If you run in a Dorinthia matchup, they're always swinging their sword, and you'll get that 1 damage back. I can also bring these in for sometimes returning the favor on Katsu's Kodachis. If you get into a low point game, being able to surprise and get that extra attack is real good, and people usually don't expect this when you're playing Boltyn. Chains of Eminence. Here's something that I've been trying out for the chain matchup. It's always good to try to get Seeds of Agony on this. I haven't had much success where this has worked well. I'm thinking about maybe cutting it because of my other thoughts on chain. And that is, chain, I've been starting to take a path of blocking him out. And in doing so, I switched to the Dawnblade as my primary weapon. This allows me to keep pressure on, and on turns that I only get 1 card, and use the rest of my cards to pretty much block everything that Chain sends my way. And once he's fatigued, you can turn around and turn on the gas and start hitting him again. But that's it. That's my deck. That's my sideboard. Yeah, let me know in the comments what you think, what you would change, and let me know if you have any questions about it. Thanks all. Bye.